Did you see that piece the other day in the Journal? And they said, when rates went down, the everything rally started, and you saw everything rally, like not just things like on the risk curve, like Bitcoin, but gold as well.
Yes, gold is my problem child. I want it to do better than it does. I keep on telling it, you can do better if only you apply yourself.
Is that working?
It is as they used to say in the Saturday morning cartoon shows, it's a part of this complete breakfast. It's a part of this complete portfolio. But you may or may not get rich holding it, but you perhaps will sleep better owning it.
But you want to own it? You want to buy it at these levels after this move, Jim?
Can I think about that question?
Yeah, think about that question.
I happen to own mine at rather lower prices.
Exactly. All right, Congressman Dan Muser, talk to us about the state of affairs in Washington. Are you expecting lawmakers relieved by Thursday, and are you expecting you get any movement on the border policy change?
Yeah. Hey, real quick, Maria, I mentioned the chip spending was $200 billion too high. It was about $100 billion. And why that's important is this. The small business we're leaving out. We're talking about spending quite a bit. Small business is getting crushed by inflation. They might be selling more. They're making less. And I'll tell you what an indicating factor is. We are down in pass-through revenue incomes, tax incomes, by $300 billion this year alone from pass-through income tax for our federal revenues. So that's very significant. But yeah, this week, we got an impeachment inquiry vote that we're taking up. We've got the NDAA. You were talking earlier how FISA's being extended over some somewhat important matters and disagreements, which I know which side of that I'm on. I think, warrants on American citizens are essential. So we'll see how we derive that in the end.
So you prefer the Jim Jordan out of the judiciary bill?
Yes, I do at this point in time. But hopefully we just come together and reach a compromise which makes sense for all Republicans and preferably all Democrats as well.
Do you think you'll get all this done by Thursday and then leave town? Or do you think you're going to leave the Ukraine aid question open until after the holidays?
I think the Ukraine question is going to remain open. It's unfathomable to me that they will not negotiate on border security. We want to support Ukraine. We want Israel, of course, but we also want to support our own border. And not that it comes first. We want it to just come. We want it to come at the same time, shall we say, simultaneously. Yeah. And you know what? It's the American people's dollars that are going overseas. They want to see them spent here in the United States protecting our border first.
Yeah, I'm stumped, Todd Pyro, as to why President Biden just won't change some policy at the border. You want the money for Ukraine. You want to send this money out. You said you wanted to unify. Secure the border.
And everybody who said this is a conspiracy theory that Democrats want voters in perpetuity, well, what other reason could there be for not wanting to stop the major problem that is impacting every facet of our country right now? And we haven't even touched on the security aspect of this. I mean, this of all the things that keep me up at night, I just too much information here. But I always ask God at the end of the night to protect my family and keep them safe, keep them healthy. I don't ask about all the money stuff. I say I can handle that. But, I also need a government that helps me out in that regard by not allowing millions upon millions of people to come in unchecked, some of whom may want to do us harm. And that, to me, is the frightening thing here. It trumps all this stuff, no pun intended. It begs the question, why? We haven't gotten that answer why. The only reason could be they want the perpetuity Democrat.
Well, it's been a pretty good year.
And they don't want to embrace past Trump policies, which is an ideological fallacy.
That's right. That anything Trump is bad. Look, regardless, it's been a good year for stocks, Rebecca. Well, certainly for the Magnificent Seven and a handful of groups within the S&P 500. NASDAQ up, 35% year to date. Would you put new money to work in this market right here going into 24, Rebecca?
Oh, gosh, I'm going to have to say no, Maria, because I'm going to go with Jim's point that he made in Fortune just recently, which is, you've got zombie companies like WeWork as an example that had such low cost of capital that were disguised rising bad business models, and that's really going to come to the fore. And I also think that with the cost of capital much higher, earnings are going to definitely be impacted. So, the Magnificent Seven shows that the breadth and depth is not there for this so-called beginning of a recovery or a soft landing, whatever you want to call it. And I just think that I think inflation is still just going to be a problem. It's going to be sticky, and therefore you can't continue. You can't go back to an easy monetary policy. Modern monetary theory is going to be tested now because we've followed it for 15 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, the backdrop is obviously slowing, Jim Grant. And even if you are in the camp of believing that at some point the Fed has to pivot and cut interest rates, isn't that in response to a potential recession or slowdown in the economy? Macro Story 24?
It could be, yes. On form, the Fed cuts heavily and persistently during a recession and on the eve of recession. And, yeah, that's what people are thinking.
By the way, I don't understand where the Atlanta Fed comes up with its numbers. How is it possible that the Atlanta Fed was looking for a 4% fourth quarter in growth?
Sorry.
Jim, your thoughts?
I'm an expert on New York. Atlanta is way out of my geographical zone.
Well, the Atlanta Federal Reserve, Cheryl Casoni, has their GDP now. Mm-hmm. And it's always stunningly strong, even in the face of weakness that you see everywhere, layoffs, inflation, and yet Atlanta Federal Reserve GDP now, what are they expecting now, 5%, 4%?
You see weakness everywhere except in the hard government data. The anecdotal weakness is prevalent and indeed almost ubiquitous, but the data, as reported, continues strong.
Yep.
The world is full of surprises. We have a 3.7% unemployment rate, and we're running a $2 trillion public deficit. If you live long enough, you see everything, which is a good reason to live a long time. It's an unending source of surprise, is this world of ours.
What a seat you're in, Cheryl. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Exactly. Well, I've always said to you, what are they putting in the coffee at the Atlanta Fed?
Yeah.
But besides that, I do want to say really quick, I've been kind of watching the Fed funds futures, the interest rate futures, and I'm looking at now for that March cut. Going into this at 8:30, it was like a 50% chance we were going to get a cut in March. Now that's about 40% chance. The weighting now has moved to the May meeting of 2024. And I know this changes, and I know it's volatile, and it's just, this is traders and what they think. But, if that's the conversation, that's where the thinking is right now, Maria.
It's a great point. I'm really glad you made it because this market has also given up lots of the euphoria that we saw immediately after the number. The stock market is up, but well off of the highs of the morning, with the Dow Industrials now showing a gain of 35. The S&P 500 is actually negative, down 2 points right now, and the NASDAQ up 10 points. Give us the final word, Tomas Philipson. What's most important about this report and what you're going to be looking at in the year ahead?
Coming back to the volatile futures, actually, that was mentioned, I think that's important because essentially the Fed is the agency that's responsible for price stability, but it's also the agency that generates price volatility more than any other agency. They were clearly engineering this inflation we have, both in goods market and, as I indicated, in the price of credit, which has been an enormous amount of volatility the last 20 years, really. It's been up and down by not 10 or 20%, but hundreds of percent in the price of credit moving around. So I think it's kind of misleading to say that, give the Fed applause if it turns out that this is a soft landing, because they're essentially only solving their own problem.
Well, I think that when Jay Powell was out there telling us everything was transitory, there was a little politics in there as well. Don't forget, he had Lyle Brainard on his heels wanting his job, and he wanted to get reappointed. So I don't know about that whole transitory conversation, Tomas.
Well, yeah, they underestimated the inflation in that period, right? But now they're overestimating it. So thinking about a soft landing when you don't even know where the plane is a little bit troublesome, I think.
That's a good point.
Jim Grant, you want to give us a prediction on your expectation for the macro story or the stock market in 2024?
Nope. No, wait. I'm supposed to. Oh, Maria. Markets will fluctuate. And it is my expectation that they fluctuate in such a way that generates actual financial value for the investor rather than actual financial momentum. That's my hope.
We will leave it there. A great conversation, everybody. We so appreciate your time. Tomas Philipson, Congressman Dan Muser, Jim Grant, Rebecca Walser, Todd